exclusive episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. We're going to get into Karen Read in just one moment, but there is breaking news, as you can see here, out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I'll be honest, I haven't seen much other than on Twitter, but multiple police officers have been shot in, I want to say, Charlotte, North Carolina. And Shannon here confirming that, North Carolina. So we are a very pro law enforcement show. Love my police officers, all my first responders, and they put their lives on the line each and every day. And from what I'm hearing, it's not a great situation and a very tense situation, and multiple SWAT units have responded. So as always, please think of those who are putting their lives on the line for all of us. So on a happier note, it is, I believe, Debbie Gibby's birthday today. So shout out to a friend of the show, Debbie Gibby, who is celebrating a birthday today. And I sure do hope I have that right, but I'm 99% certain that I do. Moving on to Karen Read. This is something that Jeff and I, and we had Josh Ritter earlier in the day watching all the opening statements. And then the first bunch of witnesses who took the stand. But the trial for Karen Read, it's, of course, about the Massachusetts woman accused in the 2022 death of her Boston police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe, got underway today, as I just mentioned, with opening statements. Karen Read of Mansfield, Massachusetts, is charged with running down John O'Keefe, her Boston police officer boyfriend, and leaving him to die in a blizzard in the town of Canton, Mass., which is important because the defense has an entire theory based on law enforcement in the town of Canton, Massachusetts. This all happened on January 29th, 2022. Karen Read has pleaded not guilty to charges of second-degree murder, motor vehicle manslaughter, and leaving the scene of a collision in a connection with John O'Keefe's death. And now, as I always struggle to speak on Mondays, this Monday is no different. I will introduce a new best guest for the first time, which I love. And as you can see there, she is a WBZ legal analyst. That is the local, which affiliate is it now, Jennifer? CBS. It is the local CBS affiliate in Boston. And I was telling Jennifer, one of my very first jobs ever in broadcast news, it was a paid internship, I think it was, when I was at Brandeis University. I worked there, and Tom Bergeron, who you guys would know from America's Funniest Home Videos and the 10 million other game shows. He used to be a local talk show host there, and I worked for him, the sports guy, a guy named Bob Lobel. But Jennifer Roman, more importantly, she is a lawyer and a legal analyst for WBZ. She's a partner at Tracy Roman and Ramos, where she concentrates her practice in all matters of domestic relations, and she is very buttoned up on the Karen Read case, and we will get her take, as well as Lisa Daddio. She is a retired police lieutenant with the New Haven Police Department in Connecticut, spending approximately 16 years in the detective division since retiring from the New Haven PD back in 2012. She's worked in higher education, teaching courses at both the undergraduate and graduate level. And last, but certainly not least, Jeff Wood, a retired FBI special agent out of Boston. He focused on gangs and gang violence. And I love saying this every time, it's romantic to me. Both of Jeff's parents served in Vietnam, where they met and eventually had, as I like to say, baby Jeff. And baby Jeff was also a war hero, served in the military, and was in special ops. So he is an American hero, you could say, and should say. Jennifer Roman. Yeah, it is Debbie Gibby's birthday, so big happy birthday to Debbie Gibby. We have a brand new merch store, believe it or not, that the COE was working on this entire weekend with cooler items, cheaper items, and she's going to be able to switch it up all the time. Anytime someone has a new saying or slogan, we will get it on a shirt or something cool, and you'll be able to purchase it in the merch store. And of course, you can support us on Patreon. Jennifer, to you first. I mean, you're up in Boston currently. Jeff used to live up in Boston for a long time. Give us a sense of the kind of the magnitude of this case from a Bostonian's perspective.
This case has been incredibly polarizing. I don't think there's anybody in the Boston area that has not heard of this case and has an opinion about this case. I think we kind of saw that with the difficulty they had with impaneling a jury. It took 4.5 days to find an impartial jury of 14 men and women from the Commonwealth. I think that sort of just indicates the challenges that were presented to both the prosecution and the defense in finding an impartial jury, because this case has received so much media coverage and it has, as I said, such a polarizing effect. Most everyone's got an opinion one way or the other. Did she do it? Did she not do it? And they all have their reasons to support their theories. It's really quite fascinating.
Yeah, we are not a political show here, but it almost feels like, Trump or not Trump, that tribal, that polarizing, the way the nation's kind of been split in two politically. That's how it feels in Boston with this case. It's either you're free Karen Reed or you believe she did this. Lisa, in recent memory, do you remember a case that has split people so decidedly? I couldn't, except for O.J. Simpson. It's the last case I can really think of that was like this. Can you think of any?
No, and that's exactly the case I was going to say to you, Joel, was the OJ case, where families would get into arguments talking about whether OJ was guilty or innocent and basing it on that. And so, no, none at all.
This is interesting. Jag says the state, Massachusetts, the Commonwealth, is not as split as the media is making it seem. It's always hard to tell because as a former member of the media, we do have a tendency to, sensationalize sometimes. So, but from the comments that I get, it sure does seem polarizing. Jeff, what was it like to watch today, in real time, a trial that's been so highly anticipated for as long as this one has?
Well, before I start, I just want to make one quick correction. Though I was an airborne ranger and I worked with many special op units, I never actually worked in the special ops field. I supported them or I was regular infantry, but I was an airborne ranger. Just want to make that clear for everyone out there.
All right.
There. But no, to me, it's always interesting. It was more interesting reading the comments from everybody watching with us. Just in the sense, again, to me, very polarizing. You've got some on the side, she's guilty, others that say she's not guilty. And for me, it's a typical first day trial. I sitting in many of them, testifying in many trials, hearings, it's not like the TVs or movies depict where you have all these gotcha movements. For me, in most of my trials, a gotcha moment was when the defense attorney just didn't necessarily pay attention to testimony I gave and try to say something or do something that they weren't paying attention. If they had, they thought I painted myself in a corner and I didn't, and then they stepped in it when I came back and was able to show them that they're stepping in it now. But it's not like the TVs, and it's very kind of slow. The prosecution goes first, and here they come in with the evidence, and people are like, well, where are they going with this? They're just trying to start to paint the picture of what the evidence is going to show by the time you get to the end. And so it can be very slow and frankly sometimes boring. I always was glad when I was sequestered most of the time, because there were times when I had to sit through the whole trial and you're sitting there going, I have to really fight to stay awake because I already know all of this and I'm kind of getting bored right now. So, but it was interesting to see, and more so the comments coming from all the listeners.
Jeff Wood, for full disclosure, I said to my wife, I feel bad. Jeff's been here all day long. And she said, don't worry, it's good because he's a good looking guy. So everyone appreciates him sitting there. So I don't know if you and I are going to have to brawl soon. I think you probably win that one as well. Here comes, I see the COE popping up in the background here. Boston Sarah, obviously from Boston, I would assume. Hi to all my STS friends and family. Boston Sarah, let us know in the comments if this is as divisive as the media is making it out or not so much. Meanwhile, Jennifer, to you, from Maureen Francis, defense won the day. Do you agree with that? And does it even really matter at this juncture of the trial, in your opinion?
Yeah, I actually wouldn't agree with that. And I'll tell you why, because I listened to the opening arguments this morning. And when the prosecution was speaking, I was like, they've got this, right? And then I heard the defense speak and I thought, oh, maybe they've got this too. And I think that that's a sign of just a really good case that's meant to be tried. When, you hear both sides of it, and when you're in it at the moment and you hear the prosecution, you think, okay, she's guilty. Probably not of second-degree murder, probably the manslaughter charge. But then you hear the defense and they're poking enough holes and potentially creating enough reasonable doubt that you're thinking, would a jury of 12 people actually find her guilty on any of these charges? And so I don't think it was clear that one side or the other sort of came out ahead today. I think it was pretty balanced. And to build off of what Jeff said, yeah, a trial is all about putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And that's the prosecution's job, right? They're taking all of these little pieces of information that they have on a fairly circumstantial case. And then the physical evidence that they have linking Kieran Reed's vehicle to John O'Keefe's body is being picked apart by the defense, at least in the openings. And we'll see what happens later on in trial. But open arguments are not evidence. So this is just a roadmap for the jury. This is what the prosecution thinks they can prove. This is what the defense thinks they can prove. And both sides have to be careful not to overcommit. And because testimony can come in differently than how you anticipate. And rules of evidence can prevent something from coming in that you thought was going to come in. And then the defense had to be really careful with their third-party culprit defense, because the judge specifically told them, you can't reference this in your opening arguments, right? You can only reference that, you can only talk about this third-party culprit defense when you have plausible evidence, that comes in through trial to support that theory. And I thought they danced kind of close to that today when they were pointing the finger at all the different individuals that they want to focus the jury on and take the focus away from Kieran Reed. So I don't agree with the view. I don't think it was a hands down defense, nor do I think it was hands down prosecution.
And Jennifer, I'm going to get back to you onto that third party culprit defense, because I'm no attorney, but it seems like they were towing a very fine line there. But we'll circle back to that in a minute. I do want to say, just aside from everything else, I was listening to Paul O'Keefe, the brother of John O'Keefe, and man, you could hear the pain in his voice. No matter which way this turns, this case, he lost his sister, Kristen O'Keefe Furbush, to a brain tumor, glioblastoma, which unfortunately I've done many stories on with children. Actually, when I was in New York City, she got the diagnosis and passed away 6 months later. And then 2 months after that, her husband died of a heart attack, leaving those kids in John O'Keefe's care. And then John O'Keefe died that night. So let's keep the family in our thoughts. I was looking at the father, who looks just devastated, as does the mother, sitting in the front row in that gallery. So no matter which way it goes, I think we're all human beings here. And that was tough to watch and tough to listen to. As Jennifer said, it is a jury of 12 and 4 alternates. Lisa, the state got a lot of criticism, and I know you work a full-time job. I'm not sure if you were able to watch it in full, but just curious what you thought so far of this first day of this trial.
Yeah, and as you stated, I unfortunately was not able to watch the first day of trial. So the only information I have is what I was able to catch up on prior to the show. And it was all geared a lot towards the defense's opening statements. So I did see, obviously, the statements that were made by Mr. O'Keefe kind of about it, but to comment on the state's opening side, I can't do that at this time.
And Totally understandable. Jeff, to you, I made a list of key players here, Jeff. I'm going to read it real quickly just to make a point, but it's Brian Albert, Colin Albert, Kevin Albert, Brian Higgins, Jen McCabe, Michael Proctor, and the list goes on. These are all people who are in that house. Just from your own experience as an investigator, Jeff Wood, and you were a great one for many, many years at the FBI. And I'm not saying it is implausible, because here's where my hate mail is going to come. Don't send it to me. I'm just asking the question. I'm trying to ask questions here. In your mind, how plausible is it that all these people could conspire together on a snowy night to cover up this murder of Karen Read, from your perspective as an investigator?
I think it would be very hard.
Send the hate mail to Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff.
Listen, there's a reason why the Hells Angels have their motto: 3 can keep a secret if 2 are dead. So you got 15 people who concocted a story, then with the statement that all the police were corrupt in Canton, the state police were corrupt. I just find it hard to believe that you could take this and make this kind of conspiracy and stick where there hasn't been a change of story. If you have good investigators, the stories are going to be during the interviews. I know my partner in crime from New Haven would probably say the same thing here. When you sit down and start talking, you find the holes in the stories, and then you're going to start picking it apart. And to say that every investigator who interviewed every single person that couldn't do that just doesn't make sense to me. But again, that's why I say we've gone to a trial, and the prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt here. And if they can't, the jury's not going to come back. I still don't think it's going to say you're going to be able to come back and say, yes, it was a cover-up. I think you're going to be able to say the defense was able to put holes into the story that filled that water into that ship that causes it to sink, or in this case, causes that reasonable doubt to creep into the minds of the jury.
Yeah.
Lisa, to you, I mean, just on this point about conspiracy, what are your thoughts on this? Is it plausible that so many people, I mean, they were in, this one home, and they were all kind of connected, either through family or friendship. Is it plausible? Because, I mean, obviously the defense is going all in 1,000%.
Right. And I think you could say that about any type of incident where there's multiple people present for when a crime has taken place, right? What makes this different is the fact that they're all somehow connected through law enforcement. And then you have to look bigger. So then you have to look beyond Canton and look at the Massachusetts State Police, and then look at the medical examiner, and then look at the forensic lab. And then if you're going to go with a conspiracy, then it's everybody. So you're going to tell me that this whole thought process, this theory that's out there, incorporated all those different divisions, all these strangers in a lot of ways, between Canton, Massachusetts State Police, the medical examiner's office, the forensic lab in Massachusetts, and so on. I just think I'm with Jeff on this. I don't see it being plausible for all of that. And let's not forget, there's also a contingent part that were at the party that are not law enforcement. Yes, they're connected, spouses, significant others, friends, whichever. But at the end of the day, is everybody gonna stand by and say, and let somebody who is innocent be charged and go through this whole thing and being able to sleep at night? If they know something that can set that person free. I don't know. I'm big on the whole karma thing. So, I would like to think that that's not possible across all the different agencies that are involved in this.
Yeah. It is important to point out that Michael Proctor is the lead investigator for the state police. He is under investigation, and it is said to be related to this case. And he is friends with the Alberts. That's the house that they were at. So that is definitely curious. I don't think it helps the state at all. And we'll get to Jennifer on what they can and cannot say in the court of law. But back to what you were saying, Jennifer, there's some comments. I knew they would come. The state bored the jury to tears, followed by what? The prosecution was horrible. followed by I was so lost on the sauce with the prosecution, too many names, no timeline, so many Brians, so lost. I have to be honest. I I am very easily persuaded. When one lawyer says one thing to me, I say, "Oh yeah." When another lawyer says something to me, I say, "Oh yeah." But I did feel like Adam Lally was lagging in energy at the very least. But you seem to
Mhm.
think he did an okay job. How come?
Yeah, the prosecution has a tougher job when it comes to opening because they tend to be more dry. The prosecution tends to be more factually based. This is the evidence we have. This is what these witnesses are going to say. I agree that ADA Lally was definitely kind of flat, particularly when defense counsel got up there. But if you really sort of listen to the story, I mean, he was throwing out a lot of names, absolutely dry for sure. But he was really very methodical in how he laid out the evidence that the prosecution anticipates on being admitted and the testimony that they anticipate coming out. And there is no doubt there are so many different people that, so many witnesses, so many people with hands in their pot in this case. You almost do need like a tree, a list of who everybody is. But that's sort of the prosecution's job, is to say to the jury, you're going to be hearing from these 15 or 20 people, right? And planting that seed. I mean, there's studies out there that say that people, we as people, we remember things when we've heard it 3 times. So this is prosecution's attempt number 1. Number 2 is going to come out when those people testify and the evidence comes in. And then 3 is going to be closing argument. So while now it was dry, he was giving the roadmap. He's not the star of the show. The star of the show are these witnesses and the evidence that's going to be coming in. And if the prosecution can deliver on what they said, then I think the defense has a tall order to fill. Because exactly, did this many people hold up this charade for that long? I mean, the jury has to suspend that disbelief that all of these different people on all these different levels participated in this cover-up to be able to say beyond a reasonable doubt that she's not guilty. But if you can convince one juror of that, that's all you need. You've got beyond reasonable doubt. You don't have beyond reasonable doubt, and they're going to have to acquit her. So, I think the prosecution was boring, but I also think it's the nature of this case. It's just the facts that they have, and they, I think that they delivered what they needed to, which was, jury, this is what you've got to listen to. You've got to focus on this evidence. You've got to focus on the physical evidence. You can't focus on all this background noise with all these different players.
And that's a great point. You kind of have to put the blinders on. And by the way, there are 12 jurors after that rather long jury selection. Jennifer, by the way, so it's about 4.5 days. What's a typical jury selection in the Commonwealth?
I don't know if there's anything that's typical, but this was definitely long. And each day that went by, their jury pool, more and more people raised their hands saying they couldn't be impartial. So I think day 1, I can't remember the statistics exactly, but I think day 1, it was like 35% said they couldn't be impartial, right? They had a large number of people, let's say 55, 60% that said we've heard of the case. But then you had of that, 25, 30% that said we can't be impartial. By day 2, you had something like 75, 80% of people raising their hands saying they heard of the case. And then an even larger percentage than the day before saying they could not be impartial based upon the information they had. And that trend continued through all of the days of the jury selection, that the number of people who heard of the case and then the number of people who said, I can't be impartial, increased every day. And that's unique. That's definitely a unique challenge. And I think that as this got closer to trial and it started to get the attention of, hey, they're impaneling a jury, more people tuned in. Maybe they weren't watching before, but now it was like, hey, I'm going to take a look. This is interesting. This is right in my backyard. And that made it, I think, people talk, and that made it harder.
Iris Hewlett, who I haven't seen in a while, in the chat. Hello, everyone. In my opinion, the state is setting a strong foundation for its evidence at trial. Followed by Lindsay Shea, the voice of reason. This case is going to take 8 weeks. Everyone has to remember we have a long way to go. We sure do. We're actually going to be airing the trial on this channel from beginning to end. On the other channel, on the Best Trials channel, we are live with Chad Daybell, and we're going to be doing shows this entire week and maybe beyond on this case, on the Karen Reed case. And we'll be doing other news, second show in a day, potentially working on something related to Charlie Adelson as we speak. There's a lot to cover here. The COE chief of everything was able to cut a couple of sound bites. Let's listen to Adam Lally with the state here first and see what he had to say. We'll watch together and then get everyone's take. Here we go.
The ones who find what the facts, and I reiterated that, the facts, and what the evidence demonstrates in this case. And what I submit to you at that time, that second time, is that the only true and just verdict based on that is that the defendant, Karen Reed, is guilty of murder in the second degree, striking the victim, Mr. O'Keefe, with her car, knocking him back onto the ground, striking his head on the ground, causing the bleeding in his brain, swelling, and then leaving him there for several hours in a blizzard.
So striking him. Lisa, they mentioned he mentions the black eyes, and I've seen a lot of people in the chat saying the black eyes must be from a fight, but if you fall on your head, you can get swelling. Can you explain that as someone who's investigated a lot of crimes?
Yeah, so when we see something like that, there's a lot of things here that you have to unpack, okay? He was outside for a prolonged period of time. We don't know exactly how long. We have a guesstimate, right? So the good thing is cold. Cold weather, being on ice, snow, slows down a lot when someone has passed away and what happens to the body naturally. Heat speeds it up, cold slows it down. So when you're looking at injuries, we always refer to the experts, right? That being the medical examiner or coroners, depending on which part of the country you live in, as to which method you utilize or which system you utilize, because they are the ones who are trained to look at deaths and rule. Are they right 100% of the time? No. There's no such thing as 100% perfection in anything in this world. So, but we rely on them. We have to. They're the ones that give us the cause and manner of death. So, we have had, meaning my time when I was in New Haven, both myself and the investigators that, when we all worked together, that we would have things like black eyes that weren't from an actual assault, but were the result of some type of head trauma. And, I can think of a high profile case where this came up too, which was, oh my gosh, I can't think of his name. Comedian passed away in his hotel room. Highly controversial because they thought he was assaulted, but there was no one that had gone in and out of his room. He was on, oh my goodness. I can't think of who it is.
I know who you're talking about too, and it's not coming to me either.
He died down in Florida after giving a concert, a show.
You talking about Saget, Bob Saget?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So he had some injuries too that were perceived as possibly not being consistent with, and everyone thought that he was assaulted, right? Mm-hmm. And so the head is a funny thing when there's been some type of injury as to where you have secondary types of things, black eyes. Think about if you get popped in the nose or your nose gets fractured, what happens? You get black eyes. Not everybody, some. So you really got to resort back to what the medical examiner, the pathologist, and everybody say regarding the trauma or the injuries that any decedent has had.
Taylor Burton here. Does O'Keefe's family think Karen's guilty or innocent? I don't like where they're placed in relation to Karen. From all accounts, Jennifer, the O'Keefes do believe that Karen committed this crime, correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's what they've been presenting to the media sources for sure.
But the parents are sitting literally close enough to scratch Karen Reed's shoulder. It's a weird setup, is it not?
It is. And this is a smaller courtroom than where Judge Cannone typically sits. Now, if you remember, the defense filed a motion, pretrial motion, to change courtrooms because the former courtroom where Judge Cannone usually sits, the witnesses would have been situated in a way, according to the defense, that not all of the jurors could see the full face of a witness. And that certainly goes against a defendant's right to be able to confront their witnesses and to assess credibility and to have the jury really sort of read body language during testimony and what have you. So the defense was successful in their motion and got it moved, But the downside was that it put them into a much smaller courtroom, which is why we have a much limited audience to the media and the family members, as opposed to a larger courtroom where more of the public could have had access to it. And that's partly why the family seems to be sitting so close to Karen Read, because it is just a tight courtroom. It's just is what it is.
Yeah, and that buffer zone that Judge Beverly Cannone instituted, is that a 200-foot or 200-yard? Do we know? 200 feet?
It's 200 feet. Yeah, I actually drove by the courthouse the other day and saw all the fencing up there.
You did. So you cannot be protesting. There's been a lot of protesters, and so it's 200 feet. I think I said 200 yards earlier. To another investigative question, there's a lot of them. There's just a lot of loose ends that we'll try to pick up today. From MJ, speaking about Proctor and some of the other investigators there, Jeff Wood, they didn't even go into the house. Is that a valid point, Jeff Wood?
Well, again, I keep seeing a lot of things where we're just buying everything the defense says, right? Everyone's saying, well, the prosecution hasn't shown anything. Prosecution isn't showing anything until now. Up until the actual trial, whenever they had to go in the courtroom, they just had to show we have probable cause, which is 50%, 50 or 50.1%, right? That we have evidence that Karen Read committed this crime. And they're not going out pre-trial saying, here's our evidence against her. It comes out in trial. The defense gets to go, and he's doing a great job throwing all this information out pre-trial. There's no gag order here, so he can say whatever he wants. And everyone's going to buy in, or a lot of people are going to buy into both sides of what's going on here and saying guilty, not guilty. Do we know for a fact that no one went in the house? I haven't seen enough to say if they did or not. If they didn't, the crime scene's outside. Do I need to go inside? The body's found outside. There's nothing maybe initially that says anything happened inside. So why go inside? So again, we don't know. And to go inside, you need a search warrant. Everyone's like, we want to talk about the law. I just can't go into the house. The crime scene's outside. Okay, we're outside. We're kind of on the curtilage. I don't necessarily need a search warrant for that, right? But if they were up close to the house, I can come out and say, get me a search warrant before you come up onto my porch. Get a search warrant to come into my house. So again, we haven't seen everything that the state prosecution team has. So I would at least knock and ask, and let's go inside and do interviews with witnesses, because I'm not going to bring them outside in the cold, snowy weather, right? And I want to separate everyone. I'm not going to interview all 15 people at once, one person at a time, so that way when I'm done, I can see, okay, every story is slightly different, and now I can start poking holes and going in. So we don't know. We haven't seen it. The reports haven't even been released for us to see. So to me, yes, it would probably be important, but we just don't know what was fully done because it hasn't come out yet.
And Jeff, welcome to my world. Look at True Virgo. This dude is so biased, followed already. And by the way, at STS, I'm literally just looking for the truth. I just want the answers. Honestly, it could go, in my opinion, it could go either way. True Virgo says, how about the state did not hold their burden? They just had opening statements today. We've got 8 weeks. So True Virgo, with all due respect, you can't say that yet. I mean, if you come back to me maybe in 5-6 weeks, Patty P here, people have their minds made up. Karen Read was framed. Jeff, you want to respond to that since she was going after you, my man?
Listen, from the facts I've read and seen, I'm going to be honest and say I tend to believe that no one in the house killed him. I don't believe a dog attacked him. But I'm honest enough to say, let me actually see the evidence before I come out and make up my mind. I'm not saying she's guilty right now. My gut is saying she is, but I need to see the evidence before I make a decision. When I was an investigator, when I made an arrest, I knew I had the guilty guy. How did I know? I had a tape of the person selling drugs. I had a tape of the person admitting to the killing he just did and giving specific evidence that only we as investigators or the killer knew. So I knew I had the right person. But just because I knew that, I still had to prove beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury that my person that I arrested was guilty of the crime I'm charging with. And so the prosecution here has evidence. They think it's strong enough. They believe that they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, the DA's office, I will say, take more chances than the U.S. Attorney's office. And it all starts with when you look at how the DA started, brand new DA. You come in every morning and you have everyone's arrest from the night before for whatever was done, and you don't have a choice to pick and choose your cases. But as you get more senior, you get put into more sophisticated cases, more sophisticated investigations, and now you get to start picking and choosing. Hey, do we have enough evidence? And if they think they do, that's when they're going to go to the grand jury and get an indictment, because you can't, in Massachusetts, have a murder trial without having a grand jury that returns a true bill indicting the person for the crime. So, I think that at the end of the day, after the trial, we will see the evidence and we can say the state had proved beyond a reasonable doubt that they've got the right person, or they're not. And again, they may not, as Jennifer said, as evidence comes in, it can throw you off. I've seen cases where we know we had the right guy, but a prosecutor asks the wrong question, the answer comes out, and that one answer is enough to put reasonable doubt into the jury's mind. And you know the person's guilty, but you just blew the case, because we're all human and we all make mistakes.
These defense attorneys, by the way, are about as savvy as they get, which we'll get back to Jennifer on. So they're going to be good at tripping them up. But this is a Jeff Wood question here from Nacho's mom. He talked about it during openings. Do you think it's possible that all those people could leave the house and not see John in the snow where they found him as far away from the front door? Jeff, tell us about your not being seen while eating story.
I can remember being in Ranger school, getting ready to be an airborne ranger, and I'm out with somebody. We get into a position. We're scouting. We're just waiting. And next thing you know, 4 enemy forces come by. They're out to look for us, make us fail, and they all sit down around us. And one guy literally walked by where his foot was in 12 inches of my face. And all I did was lay on the ground and not move and try and breathe as easily as I could. I've got my rifle hidden underneath me, and I'm just like, please God, don't see me and screw up this mission, because I just want to pass so I can graduate. And they sat there for 15 minutes until one of the instructors finally came back in and saw them and said, hey, guys, this isn't where you're supposed to be eating chow and relaxing. You've got to go over here and try and find everyone. And they left. But for 15 minutes, they had no idea that there was 2 of us within just touching distance of them. So yes, I think at night in bad conditions, people would not see them, right?
And that was without snow falling. So that just goes to Jeff's point. No one is biased here, just trying to answer questions. I know the hate mail is coming. I guess it'll make for an interesting night tonight. To Lisa Daddio, these are investigative questions here. 1776 daughter. It seems the case hinges on the Google search done from a phone inside the house. Of course, Jennifer McCabe was Googling how long does it take to die in cold, I think. Couldn't Google servers timestamp when that search arrived at their end? What do you think we'll find out about this? It's got to either be before the death or after the death. It can't be both ways, right?
Right. Well, don't forget we have a window, right? So we only know, I believe it's a 4-hour window, but don't hold me to that. For some reason, that's sticking in my brain. And I can see the comments coming up, and whether you like it or not, what Jeff stated is true. We have to wait for the information to come out. All we know is what the defense has said. The state isn't going to come out publicly and attack a statement made by the defense. They're going to do it in a trial, which is what they do. So I think we need to just wait and see each day what evidence is presented, and then we can see what they have or what they don't have. We have to remain unbiased, like it or not. Yes, I spent 20 years in law enforcement, but that doesn't mean that I say that I think every single investigation, every single cop is perfectly fine. We're human. We're part of a human race like every profession. But we have to wait till all the evidence is presented. Back to the whole Google side, since that was a question that was asked, Joel, and what you asked me. Yes, there will be some information that is provided to Google that may or may not help or hurt, right? At the same time, if the state has that information, i.e. the investigators, that's exculpatory. If they have that information at the time prior to the arrest being made, they have to disclose that in their arrest warrant. It has to be in their report. It's called exculpatory evidence. Whether you like it or not, it has to be disclosed so that the judge reading an arrest warrant can make a determination based upon all the information that is in that affidavit, not just one side of it.
Here's a super chat, and I'll let Jennifer take this. There was a federal grand jury that proved much of the evidence of a cover-up. One of the witnesses has, I think it's supposed to be a proffer. Jennifer, what do we know about this, if anything?
We really don't know a whole lot right now. And what's presented to a grand jury isn't indicative of what the actual facts are in terms of things you're able to prove at trial. And witnesses get plea deals, right? I mean, that's just what we do. It's how we get people to talk. It's how we get information from reluctant witnesses. And that's something that if it's relevant and pertinent and germane to this case, this defense team is going to bring it up. You said they are one of the best defense teams out there. They're not going to leave any stone unturned. If there's really this issue here going on with a cover up and what have you, they're going to prove it. They'll be able to plant they'll be able to plant the seed that she's not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's their job, right?
Yeah,
That's what
Alan Jackson, I didn't mean to cut you off. One of the defense attorneys, he got Kevin Spacey off on a 2019 series of sexual assault charges. So he's an LA lawyer, very savvy. Not that Boston lawyers aren't just as savvy, but just to be able to get a high profile person off on those charges. You see white paint saying, just wait till you see her tail light intact, implying that there was a conspiracy. And then I'll be honest, I have not seen this comment in this way, this open. Jill Downey, I think the defense theory is ridiculous. I've not seen anyone state it that bluntly. Brave of Jill Downey, because she might be getting the hate mail tonight. We'll see. Turtle Boy, who I've had on the show, if he saw that comment, he would not be too happy with Jill Downey, but he's not on the jury, so don't need to worry about that. There was another thing that was interesting today that came up, Lisa Daddio, which I'll come back to you on. It's another kind of an investigative issue, and that is in the opening statements, the defense said, look, John O'Keefe is like a 6'2", 220-pound man, and he had these black eyes and these, what they're saying are dog lacerations. Other people are not, and cuts and scrapes. But he said he had no injuries to his torso, which you would assume would happen from a car backing into you. I found that interesting. I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a doctor. What do you make of that, if anything?
Yeah. Again, it comes down to what was the position of him, what was he doing at the time, if we're, buying into that he was hit by her car. The reconstruction side of it, the recreation side of it from investigators could possibly answer that. Again, we're going to need photographs of the injuries on his body, what the medical examiner said, and what was his position at the time. Now, was he standing up? Was he crouched over? Was he already struggling or started to fall at the time of impact, if we're going with what the state has said, that he was hit by her car? All that stuff is going to come out, obviously, as each witness testifies.
And Jennifer, I assume the defense has to be really careful here because they're promising a lot right out of the gates. And to that point, they're saying, look, he had no injuries on his torso. But if the state comes out with evidence that he was, in fact, in a kneeling position or bent down, that would make perfect sense. But they're, for the purposes of opening statements, omitting that potential fact. Do they have to be careful with over promising and under delivering to the jury?
Both sides need to be careful about what they present to the jury in openings because you lose credibility. You know, if you've really overpromised your case and that's not how the evidence comes in, the jury starts to question, and you don't want the jury questioning you as a representative of the defendant, right? You want them believing in you. You want them trusting what you're saying, particularly because remember, the defense largely does cross-exam. They are providing they're asking questions in a suggestive manner, a leading manner, as we call it, meaning they're suggesting the answer to the witness, and they can do that on cross-exam, and that's largely the defense's case. And so if the defense is not trusted, that can really hurt their client. So they do have to be careful. And I think the defense glossed over anything that they didn't really like today. They did acknowledge that the taillight was cracked. It was just going back to one of those comments, watch us find out that the taillight wasn't actually cracked. Yeah, they admit that. They say, but they explain that as she hit John O'Keefe's car in her state of panic, leaving her home at 6:15, 6:30 in the morning, going to look for him, right? But the defense did gloss over the fact that he had glass shards, according to the prosecution, in his hand, and he was John O'Keefe was seen leaving Waterfalls with a cocktail glass in his hand, and that evidence of that cocktail glass was found at the scene, and he had glass in his hand, suggesting it was in his hand when he fell over or got hit. They're sort of glossing over the fact that she didn't necessarily need to hit him hard, right? And Lisa can comment on this much more articulately than I can, but it would have just been enough to knock him over and for him to hit the back of his head and suffer a skull fracture. They were both drinking. Right. They're both, it's undisputed. They were both drinking. So maybe he wasn't entirely steady on his feet getting out of that car. And that would explain why he's not hit in the torso area. Maybe he was already stumbling. And maybe he had already fallen over. We don't know yet what the prosecution's real theory on this is, because as we've noted here, they've been tight-lipped. Which is really their job, right? I mean, they have to be protective of their evidence. They have to be protective of their witnesses. The defense can be a little bit more, and they are more loose and more free to talk about their theories of the case to sort of gauge public opinion. But the prosecution really shouldn't do that because then they're potentially compromising the presentation of the facts from their viewpoint.
And again, I think this case is really fascinating. I would say the predominant number of cases that your trials that one watches, you are generally, I guess, more biased towards the state side. In this case, or in other words, against the defendant, in most cases, I would say. But in this case, I feel like it is definitely down the middle, if not more so, in favor of Karen Reed. And it's just unusual. But I'm just so interested as a reporter, as a journalist, to see what this evidence is and to see how it is all meted out by the attorneys on both sides. And look, everyone is saying Adam Lally like blew it today, but I think he's a pretty effective attorney, and he's been around for a while. It's not his first case here, so I think there is a long road ahead of us, and I wouldn't underestimate him. That's my 2 cents. But Andrew here says, I hope you get Turtle Boy back on again. That was the funniest episode ever on STS. Joel, I felt for you that day. It was like watching a train wreck. For those who did not see it, it was Wendy Murphy, who is a New England College of Law professor, adamantly believes that Karen Reed is guilty versus Turtle Boy, and it erupted into chaos. But I've been in touch with both. I don't think I'd put them on the same show again, but I'm not opposed to getting Turtle Boy back on. And I want to ask Jennifer and the others in a little while what the effect of Turtle Boy has been on this whole case, because he is the elephant in the room, and you can't really talk about the case without talking about him. Amy in Boston with a kind of a funny slogan that I might have to impart to other people. My mom used to say the only thing open after 2 a.m. are emergency rooms and legs. So nothing good, I guess, happens after 2 a.m. Let's take a listen here to this is David Yannetti, the defense attorney, on the other side during opening statements.
Karen Reed was framed. Her car never struck John O'Keefe. She did not cause his death. and that means that somebody else did.
There you go. That was the first thing he said, I believe. Karen Reed was framed. Jennifer, he wasn't holding back. Came right out of the chutes, saying she was framed. Were you surprised that he blurted that out? The first few words. She was 4 words. Karen Reed was framed.
He used those 4 words to capture the audience immediately, and it worked. Right? I heard him say that, and I sat up a little straighter.
Yeah.
And then he waited, and hello, I'm David Yannetti. I represent Karen Reed. It's my pleasure to represent her. So it was a grabber. I mean, it pulled you right in. And it was a really smart move because their whole premise of this case is someone else did it. So why not just tell the jury right away where you're coming from and grab their attention? Which was particularly poignant, I think, because ADA Lally's presentation was more factually driven. It was more timeline, names, So I think coming out with that sort of like boom moment just sort of kind of snapped everybody into attention and had the effect that he wanted, right? Get them to listen, get them to start to buy into the story if they're not already. And if they are already thinking that she was framed, great. Now I'm just going to affirm that for them.
The band says Yannetti is fire, and he used to be a prosecutor, so he knows how to play both sides. His delivery was definitely, just from a theatrical standpoint, from a performative standpoint, was much stronger, I thought, than Adam Lally. But that's not, that's what gets you reviews on Broadway, but it doesn't necessarily win verdicts for you if the jury doesn't agree with what you're saying and the evidence doesn't back it up. So we'll have to see what happens. But so Jennifer, there was a big issue here with Judge Beverly Cannone saying, look, during your openings, no exhibits can be shown. Each side has 45 minutes. And to the defense, she said, no third party culprit defense. Number one, what does that mean? And number two, I think it means you couldn't bring up the whole framing issue, but they did it right away, basically. But they got so close to whatever that legal line is.
Yeah. So the third party culprit defense is essentially what it sounds like, that a third party did this. A third party is responsible for John O'Keefe's death. And that's exactly how David Yannetti started, right? Someone else is responsible for this death. And I think he definitely walked a fine line in his opening argument because although he never directly came out and said Trooper Proctor did this or, one of the Alberts did this, he definitely painted the picture that Proctor was in on this, that Proctor was trying to protect the Alberts, and that somebody other than Karen Reed did this, did this crime. Now, we don't know what happened at sidebar after openings because that's sort of, out of the earshot of the courtroom. But in that situation, if the prosecution really felt that David Yannetti crossed the line, they could have objected and asked the judge to instruct the jury to move to strike those portions of his opening argument. I think Yannetti towed the line sufficiently on this, but he definitely came close and maybe even dipped his toe in the water a little bit. But I think he saved himself by not explicitly pointing the finger at a specific person. Rather, he started to build this theory or demonstrate their theory that a lot of people were involved in a fight inside the house and that they are the ones who did this, not Karen Reed. And he did that skillfully, right? Without actually naming anybody specific, which definitely would have crossed the line for the.
Yeah. And someone pointed out he's also a former prosecutor, so he probably understands better than most about how to toe the line, but it was very close to whatever third party, culprit defense is. There's someone else in here talking about, I just saw something else, but it just passed me by. There's another soundbite we have from David Yannetti. Let's listen to this. Before we get to that, though, from White Paint, who is definitely a free Karen reader. First two witnesses were great for the defense. So the first two witnesses was Peter O'Keefe, was it Peter or Paul? I'm sorry, I'll have to look it up. But John O'Keefe's brother and his wife, Erin O'Keefe, they were, very well spoken, very articulate, talked about their love for their family, also talked about a little bit of trouble between Karen Reed and John O'Keefe, that they would periodically argue, but basically said it was no big deal. Jeff, to you, do you think, Paul, thank you, White Paint. Jeff, to you, do you think that they were good witnesses for the defense because they did not make it seem like it was this horrible relationship, that it was just this periodic kind of bickering and arguing?
No, I don't think it was. I don't think they were good witnesses for the defense. I think when I looked at what I saw them saying, I think the defense or the prosecution was trying to show that there were problems in the relationship. Was as rosy as everyone's making it out to be, right? Here you hear the sister-in-law. She caught her boyfriend kissing another woman, and then she's saying, leading up to that night, I wish I'd never spoken to O'Keefe since New Year's Eve, right? To me, it's kind of damaging for the defense, but it's not evidence in the sense that we're looking at as here's the evidence. They're laying the groundwork for the other evidence to come in. I think when I look at the brother, when he's out there and you see the person, the arguments made by Turtle Boy. Oh, they went back to the house and collected evidence from the driveway. Well, how could they collect evidence from the driveway after it's been snowplowed? I think that's where the prosecution was trying to go with that, to already put in when the defense brings this up. Wait, we just saw a video of the neighbor snowplowing the driveway. He went right by where her car was supposed to be parked, and we didn't see him stop when it started kicking up stuff and clattering around in the snowplow. Now, I could be wrong. I'm just guessing here, but that's my thought. So I just think that, they're trying to paint the picture from the get-go, and it's just, here's our witnesses. I know a lot of people said, well, the defense didn't cross. Absolutely. Why cross and make yourself look like a bad guy with two family members who we've all seen? They lost their sister, they lost their brother-in-law, and now they've lost their brother. So there's, to cross-examine them is not going to do anything for the defense either. So better to look like, hey, we don't have anything, let it go, and we'll go after every cop. That's who they're saying has done everything wrong here. When they're done with this first police officer, the defense is going to go after him hard. We'll see that once direct is done. Cross is going to go after that police officer hard. And now this is where, according to the defense, we'll start seeing the police officers unravel. Because, again, with every police officer that responded to that scene, from the state police to the Canton police, and let's not forget, Canton's a smaller town. When something like this happens, police officers from the other towns come in. So Canton's going to have police department officers there. There's going to be officers from Milton and other towns that are next to Canton. You're going to have the state police crime lab, the state police homicide unit, that are all going to come in. And if this is true, if they've done this cover up, we're going to find it out in cross-examination. If they don't, I just don't see that many police officers who are going to be able to have that great of a story that wouldn't fall apart under cross-examination.
Interesting. Iris Hewlett says, Michael Proctor wasn't the only investigator, and the more the trial continues, we will see a full investigation, unlike the picture Turtle Boy has painted. I'll probably get hate messages from my man TB later today. Lisa, I'm just wondering with you, there's a question about the plow driver. We'll get to that in a minute, but just when you had to testify in court, or when you had a case, was it a common practice for defense attorneys to say, hey, Lisa Daddio didn't do the right job, she didn't do everything she was supposed to do? This is obviously to an extreme, talking about a conspiracy, but I imagine as a law enforcement officer, you're used to defense attorneys saying, hey, they just didn't do their job the way they were supposed to.
Yes, and that's where best practices will come out, and oftentimes defense attorneys will say to you, "Are you aware of the such and such best practices? What is the New Haven Police Department's policy or procedure for handling, and did you follow that?" So it goes down that road, obviously, to discredit any testimony if there's issues that arise prior to or during the trial. And so, from a law enforcement perspective, we anticipate those questions all the time. Do you get them all the time? No, actually. I think that cases that are more open and shut, you don't get that question as much. And then you have, this case, which obviously is focusing significantly on law enforcement and a cover up. And so you're going to get that question. Everybody involved in this process from the state side is going to get that question, from the forensic lab personnel to the medical examiner to, every police officer that's involved in it is going to get that same exact question, I would anticipate. So yeah, kind of used to it. It's a normal thing. And this case is obviously not any different.
Yeah. Grimly fiendish. Back to Lisa on this. So the plow driver is lying too. He is unbiased. Prosecution said the street wasn't plowed that night. What do we make of the plow driver that was allegedly interviewed here?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, the problem, and I see it from multiple comments that were here, we haven't done our homework, we meaning the panel. We don't have all the information. We have the information, obviously, that was released, right? That many of you have, and some of you may even be more in tune to it than those of us that have a full-time job and can't be in tune to it. So it's interesting to me, again, that a plow driver didn't see the body. However, not knowing the road, not knowing anything, is he paying attention to the left side of the street as he's driving so he doesn't hit anything and he's driving the plow? Is the road wide? Is it narrow? And he may not see something that is laying on the right. I don't know. I don't have the pictures. I don't have the video. The only thing you can do is ask, right? So one would think if he saw something, he's going to report it. That makes common sense to me. But then again, we know that doesn't happen in cases where people see something and they don't want to say something. Again, not knowing, I don't think he's part of the conspiracy theory. He just may not honestly have seen anything, or maybe at the time that he plowed it, I don't know the time, was the body there or not?
Or was it just an oversight? Kathleen says, "Oh, Jeff Woods, stop. They were great witnesses for the defense," followed by, "Is this guy watching the case?" Yeah, he watched it with me today, and he was in the FBI for 20 years. And now this, you can respond to that, Jeff, but here's a question for you. This was sort of interesting to me. Did anyone else find it odd that the owners of the party house, the Alberts house, did not go outside when the cops, EMS, and Karen were all outside with John's body? What do you make of that part of it, Jeff?
Listen, I got to be honest. I'm not there to see everything, but I do know this. Cops, when they want to unwind and party, can party harder than anyone I've ever seen. I took my task force to New Orleans. I was doing a training. I was teaching. I have never seen people drink for as long as I did my partners. At 6 o'clock in the morning, if you were partying all night, and you look at John and Karen, they started partying earlier in the day. Then he's still partying supposedly at midnight when he gets dropped off. They've been partying all day. At 6 o'clock, that's when everyone shut down for a few hours. Who knows what they heard, what they saw? They could have been dead asleep at that time, passed out. So yeah, I mean, it looks odd. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but we don't know. We weren't there. We're just hearing what the defense attorney is saying. I'm reading all these comments, so I'm looking down below. I'm told I'm already falling asleep as a panel guest right now as I'm trying to read some of these comments. I think we're getting to the point now where people have made their decisions, and they're not, they're saying, a lot of the comments I've seen, the three of us are all biased already on this. Yes, I'm a law enforcement officer. I'm saying based on what I've seen, I think she may be guilty of hitting him. I'm not saying she purposely killed him. You know, I've said already on the show, I think they may have overcharged here. But even with that initial biases, I think that she hit him. I'm not going to come out and say she's guilty. I'm going to wait to see the evidence and then make my decision. And if the prosecution doesn't show me the evidence that she's guilty, then I'll be the first one to say, I'm voting not guilty, right? And I think that's the problem here. We're having people who haven't seen all the evidence, who've made their minds up, and they're accusing us of being biased. And I think they're, you know, unfortunately, they're shutting themselves down, which isn't a good thing. I've said as an investigator all the time, a lot of cases as we're doing our investigations, you get a hunch. And based on your training, your experience, I've been investigating crimes for 20 years. This is where I think my investigation is going to go. But I have to keep an open mind. So if it doesn't go that way, I don't plow down that road trying to force evidence to be there when it's not. I have to keep an open mind to be able to say, I'm wrong right now. Where is my evidence actually leading me? And we're, you know, everyone's saying in the comments, you know, hey, this is what we have. We haven't seen the evidence yet. We have not seen everything. So we have to be patient. We have to watch out. And the beauty of our judicial system is you are innocent till proven guilty. The prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. That gives our prosecutors, they go first to prove the evidence. And the defense does not have to prove anything. Their job is to just show that here's reasonable doubt. And it can happen so many different ways. And if they do it, then they're going to win. If they don't, the prosecution proves beyond a reasonable doubt. We'll see it as we come out. And that's what we all have to keep that open mind saying, I feel this way, I believe this, but until we're done this trial, no one knows other than what we have when that comes out.
And I told the COE half jokingly, I said, after we're done doing the Karen Reed trial, we'll either have one subscriber or double the subscribers because this is polarizing and I'm starting to lean towards one. Might be another way for me to get out of work. I'll just make the COE go get a job and all is well that ends well. So we'll see. I'll let you know in 8 weeks if we have one or double the amount. Lisa Daddio, one of the things that Adam Lally, the state, the Commonwealth, I keep saying the state, but it's a Commonwealth. In his openings, he said, Karen Reed even said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him in the hours after O'Keefe's death. I mean, very simple statement, but she repeated it 3 different times. And that is a kind of statement. How do you, I don't want to say come back from that statement, but it's a powerful statement, admitting out loud, saying I hit him.
Right. So we call this a lot of times like spontaneous utterances. They're worth their weight in gold, honestly, for a lot of investigations. We don't always have them. That's also why, like, detectives or law enforcement officers a lot of times will ride in the ambulance with somebody who is still alive to see if anything is stated. Again, it's easy to get kind of tunnel vision, but as an investigator, you have to remain unbiased and open-minded and get all the facts and evidence that you can get and not hone in just on, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. And why would she make that statement, right? There's that whole side of it. If there wasn't some truth to that. And again, I think as the days go on, the weeks go on, things are going to start to make more sense for all of us. And we're going to know exactly what the state has or doesn't have, or what the defense has or doesn't have. And so, as you know, it's being patient for all that information to come out.
And True Virgo, who is clearly a free Karen reader, context, Joel, it could have been echoed in the moment of trauma or it being a question. It certainly could. Needless to say, we don't know yet. We don't know. And I think that we will hear this as the trial progresses, and we'll get more texture, if you will, to those comments where she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. That is Karen Reed. Adam Lally also said we're going to hear from people inside that Canton home that evening. He also referenced a 20-minute shouting match in Aruba where Karen Reed and John O'Keefe were going at it, obviously to show that there was a little bit of tension in the relationship. But I think pretty much anyone who's in a relationship argues. I can tell you that my beautiful mother, married to my dad for 63 years, never went a single day without yelling at him. So, you know, different couples react in different ways. There's another soundbite here. This is a good time to take it. This is David Yannetti. What is this here? Also said, did I hit him? There you go. There you go. So different interpretations of this, I suppose. But let me bounce out. By the way, my friend Dr. G did do an analysis, and he will come on the show likely this week. And he's an expert at body behavior, not good for the free Karen readers. Let's put it that way. But I have to get him on to explain why. Here is David Yannetti.
Early juncture in this case, you will question the Commonwealth's theory of the case. You will question the quality of the Commonwealth's evidence. You will question the veracity of the Commonwealth's witnesses.
All well and good there, Jennifer Roman. You're going to question all this, but he's got to bring receipts, doesn't he?
He certainly does. He certainly does. And, you know, on that body language piece, I want to say something that sort of perturbed me significantly about this case is how Karen Reed has turned into a celebrity. And she greets her free Karen Reed, you know, fellows. Hi, sweetie. You know, it's very bizarre. I mean, this woman is facing very serious charges, and she's smiling for the camera, smiling for her supporters, entering the courthouse smiling. It's really disturbing, I think, to watch that. And I think it's really disrespectful to John O'Keefe's family as well.
And speaking of that, True Lifestyles, a friend of the show here, helps us behind the scenes on a lot of cases. I can't get past Karen Reed not speaking to the O'Keefes anymore. Not a good look. Obviously, there's just so much tension in the air there for so many different reasons, coming from so many different directions. But there were some bombshells dropped. That is a news term, a cliche, but I would call them bombshells today in Yannetti's opening statements. He said that Michael Proctor, who was investigating this case for the Massachusetts State Police, was searching for nude photos of Karen Reed on her own phone, but couldn't find any. I hadn't heard this before, Jennifer. Is this a new revelation that we heard in opening statements, and your response to it when you did hear this?
Yeah, this wasn't something we had heard before. And I'm not really sure what the relevance, I mean, how that's going to really help the defense. You know, one of the things the prosecution was doing by calling the first two witnesses that they did was humanizing John O'Keefe, right? Tell us who he was as a person. Tell us who he was as a father figure to his, you know, to his siblings' children. And I think that was, you know, strategic on the prosecution's part. A lot of thought goes into how you present your case, what's your order of witnesses. And so to hear something like that come from the defense team, in a way, it sort of felt a bit slanderous and disrespectful to John O'Keefe and his relationship with Karen Reed. You know, but at the same time, it's supposed to make Proctor seem like this total bad apple. And I think it had that effect. It just seems so distasteful. It just seems like, well, why would somebody be doing that? That's just gross, right? And that was the effect that the defense wanted, right? Is Proctor's just going to do anything he wants. He feels he's above the law, and he's just going to perpetuate this cover up and this fraud, no matter what it takes. And you know, this was one of those things, allegedly looking for nude photos on her phone.
Yeah. So Lisa Daddio, that is what they revealed in opening statements, that this lead investigator, Michael Proctor, was looking for nude photos, but it got worse from there. According to David Yannetti, the lead investigator, Massachusetts State Trooper Michael Proctor, who's also a friend of the Alberts, the homeowner, not only allegedly searched Reed's phone for nude photos, but also texted a friend on his personal phone that he hoped Reed would kill herself. This is according to David Yannetti. If this is true, and they're going to have to show that this is true, that's troubling. I mean, that's troubling on many levels. But what do you think it does for the case specifically?
Well, it taints it significantly. It shows that he is unbiased. And honestly, there's just so many issues with the allegations that are coming out about all of that, right? And so on the negative side, it taints the entire investigation. And then it's going to be, well, if he did this, who else did something wrong, illegal, unethical, whichever, and it just spreads from there. And policy is going to come up in this whole thing, where typically agencies have a policy in place that if you are connected to the investigation in any way, you have to step aside and it has to go to somebody else. So there's reasons for that, because no matter how hard you try, it's going to be found out, and you shouldn't be investigating something if you know any of the sides involved in it. You need to recuse yourself from it. And so that's going to come into play as well, as it should, to be quite honest with you. It's going to be interesting to see when this whole thing comes out, exactly everything that is involved in this whole thing. Back to the evidence, we're day one into the trial, and it's definitely going to be quite a wild ride.
Yeah, for sure. From Laura Greer here. This is involuntary manslaughter, Jennifer, to you on this question at best, not second-degree murder, but I don't know. Waiting on the evidence to determine what I think, and may never have an answer. Can you tell us the difference between involuntary and second, and if you feel this is overcharged?
Yes. So the difference is that with involuntary manslaughter, you can be convicted of involuntary manslaughter for reckless or wanton conduct. So in other words, you were so reckless in your behavior that it was likely you could have caused the death of somebody, right? You don't have to intentionally want to kill somebody. You just have to act in such a reckless and wanton or just sort of crazy manner that it's likely death could result. That's the manslaughter charge. The second-degree murder charge requires an intent. It requires an intent that she planned on killing. She wanted to kill him. She intended to kill him. And that's what the defense was getting at today, that she didn't have the intent to kill him. It totally ignores the manslaughter charge where she doesn't need an intent, that she had to act in a reckless manner. And so far, what we've heard from the prosecution is that she did act in a reckless manner. The prosecution has promised us that we're going to hear testimony and have evidence from her vehicle that she was going 24.2 miles per hour in a reverse position for 60 seconds. 24 miles per hour in reverse. That's crazy, whether you're doing it for a second or for 60. And they're alleging that she was going 60, a full minute. So something like that, if that is proven, that would be reckless and wanton conduct that is likely to result in the death of somebody, right? It's likely you're going to hit your boyfriend who's getting out of, just got out of your vehicle. If you're reversing that quickly, nobody can get out of the way that fast if someone's coming at them at 24 plus miles per hour in reverse. So that's the big difference, is the intention issue. I do think it was overcharged. I think that if anything, this is a manslaughter case. This is not a second-degree murder case. But we'll see. We'll see how the evidence comes out. I might be saying something different in 5 weeks from now, just depending on how this evidence unfolds. But that's how I see it now.
Can the jury come back potentially guilty, but with a lesser charge? Do they have that discretion, or do they have to base it on what she's been charged with?
They have to base it on what she's been charged with. So it would either be, guilty or not guilty on the second-degree murder charge, guilty or not guilty on the manslaughter. On the manslaughter, they have the ability to decide whether it was because of wanton and reckless conduct or whether or not there was actually an intention to kill him. But the sentence would essentially be the same for both under these circumstances. Then we have the somewhat lesser charges, but still quite serious, leaving the scene, of serious injury, leaving the scene of death. In this case, as she would have to know that he was dying or likely to die.
By the way, I always say the fastest 90 minutes in all of true crime, and you're experiencing why. I cannot believe we're an hour and 20 minutes, but there's a couple more things I want to cover, and then I've got to let everyone cut loose. But after opening statements, STS Nation's poll, I think Karen Read is not guilty, 42%. Need more evidence to decide, 32%. I think Karen Read is guilty, only 17%. This could be a hung jury, 8%. So do with that what you will. But I suppose a lot of the people, maybe not, because a lot of people in here are following this case very closely. And in theory, we would like to believe that the jury is fairly impartial at this point. I thought I saw a new soundbite, but I did not. This is just video of Karen Read in court today, just to get a sense of what she was looking like. And that, if you can see in the very top left corner, where you see the green blouse and then that blue arm to the left, those are John O'Keefe's parents. So that's how close they were to Karen Read today. And Ida Shaw reminding us, I passed through the comment that at the end of the day, you want justice for the O'Keefes. Whatever happened in that house, you just want the truth to come out, and that's all we can ask for. A huge part of this, look at Ned Smith. I think she may or may not be guilty. Excellent answer. You sound like a real politician now, Ned Smith. You can run for presidency of STS Nation. She says she's in Switzerland right now. Jeff Wood, I just want a little more hate to come your way. So let me ask you this. The dog, Chloe, the German Shepherd, big part of this case. People saw these autopsy photos after a motion was filed by the defense. They came out. It's important to note that most of the medical examiner's report has been under seal. People don't know about that because it's against the law to reveal it publicly in the state of Massachusetts. When you look at this, Jeff, and here comes the hate, do you see an animal attack? Do you see dog bites? Do you see those types of lacerations on the arm?
I don't. In the photos I've seen, I don't think the dog bite. I don't. I mean, I've been standing right next to a canine when I saw him in the Army attack someone, and I saw the dog bite there. There's a bigger puncture wound, and then if there's going to be a scrape, you're going to see you're not going to see a scrape on the arm. You're going to see flesh that's shredded, and I'm not seeing that. Again, my point is this is where the prosecution needs to show this is what we have. This is what was found. There's no dog DNA or saliva on the arm or whatever, right? Again, we don't know. The defense is doing a great job of saying this is what happened, and they're just trying to muddy the waters, and we'll see what happens down the road. At the end of the day, I agree with the sense that as an investigator, if I showed up, and again, maybe this is going through his head, we're not the person, we don't know, the body's out in the yard. Is there anything at that initial time to make me suspect the person in the house who I know is guilty of a crime? So do I need to separate myself from this? Me, I can, as an investigator, I'm very cautious when I do things. I would side on the air of caution. There are times where people go, well, why would you read somebody the rights? When I was in Afghanistan, I read this guy's rights. Why? Because I wanted to try and get this individual extradited back to the United States for the terrorist action he committed. And I just knew if I was successful, a defense attorney would go up and down me for not reading his rights. But technically, we're outside of the United States. It was a Pakistani male who killed an American in Afghanistan and several other people. Does he have our constitutional rights? No. So, when you look at things, every investigator is different. You learn which risks to mitigate, which risks to take during your investigations or doing proactive law enforcement stuff. And so that's, things you have to take into mind. So for me, I look at the dog, I don't see it, but you've got people saying, oh, it was a dog. Others saying, no, it wasn't. We'll see what the defense attorney and what the prosecution bring to the table to prove their point. So, but my point is, and let everyone who wants to hate on me. I can take it. I'm a big boy. I put my pants on like everyone else for a good time. And we'll go from there. And if I'm wrong, great. I'm wrong. I am more than happy to admit when I'm wrong, because at the end of the day, what do we learn from our mistakes? We learn more from our mistakes than when we do from our successes. So I know by the time I ended my career, all the mistakes I made, including up near the end of my career, helped me make better cases and better to prove to a jury that what I'm presenting to them is true and accurate and beyond a reasonable doubt.
Well said. Even though people are going to still hate you. DG says, yes, you see dog bites. I've been bitten by dogs before, and they're identical to what you're seeing on his arm. Just do a simple Google search of dog bites. It's very obvious. Not obvious to everybody, though. Rosemary Romero, this is Talisa Daddio. What is the motive for the people at the home? This is a very innocent series of questions here. What would be the motive for the people at the home to murder John O'Keefe? Why would that same family want to frame Karen Reed? What do they have against Karen Reed? How would you answer this?
Oof, those are loaded questions. So, part of me, I know, right? This whole podcast has been that way. So part of me thinks it probably didn't set out as being a murder, right? And back to the whole manslaughter part of it. And so, was there a fight? And during the course of it, things got out of hand. And did he pass away in the house? Did he leave if there was a fight in the house? And then he went outside and maybe got hit by someone else or her, right? Karen. And so there's all this stuff. Again, we don't have the timeline. Like there's a whole chunk of time that's missing. So, I would like to think nobody initially intended for the murder. And that's where, what Jennifer had stated regarding the manslaughter part of it. So, and I forget what the other questions were, and you took the chat down.
Yeah, that was the COE, but you got enough of them. I've been doing this all day and an hour and a half show, so I wish I could remember, but I can't. However, I do remember this. Our book tour starts next week. I've got a book out on Amazon, which is the same title as the podcast, but it is, my mother is a child Holocaust survivor. For those new to the show, she was actually saved by nuns. Nuns saved my mom's life. And she's had a wild life, a wild ride, and she's given all kinds of life advice in the book. And it's funny. You can't really use the word Holocaust and very funny in a sentence. But when you get to my mom, she's all about humor, and it is funny. So we're coming to Boston. So if you guys hate me or if you love me, either way, it's okay. You can RSVP. Jennifer, I'd love to see you there. May 16th, Hummingbird Books. Dr. Ann Burgess, who is literally and figuratively named a living legend in true crime. She helped develop the FBI's behavioral analysis unit, one of the first people to ever profile serial killers. She's going to be our special guest. 87 years old. She's still going strong. She's got a new docuseries coming out about her that is produced by Dakota Fanning and her sister. I have no idea what the sister's name is, but that's going to be out in Hulu in June. But these are the different places you can see us: Toronto, Boston, Tallahassee, Tampa, Philly, New York City, Miami Beach. Miami Beach is next Monday, this coming Monday. And I'll put this out on social and you can RSVP, and would love to meet you all in person. Like I said, I message periodically, very periodically with Turtle Boy. And Jennifer, I mean, I personally, look at this, right on cue here. You should have Turtle Boy on. Let me get this off. I am not opposed in any way to having Turtle Boy back on. I just want it to be balanced when he's on, with other guests. But Personally, I never, and most reporters, people who portend to be journalists, they don't want to involve themselves in the story, but he's really become a big part of this story. Just, I'm curious, what do you make of his involvement? It was also revealed that he was having a lot of phone conversations with Karen Read herself, that reportedly he was given a car, all sorts of things. And he's really driven a lot of the narratives. I mean, he's done it from his perspective. He's done a really good job. He's gotten the word out there, but it's been pretty one-sided. Curious about your thoughts.
Yeah. So the reports are that, and it's actually confirmed that Karen Read's brother bought a car for Turtle Boy. And then there are reports that Karen Read was providing him with information that had not yet been made public. It was part of the investigation, sort of stuff that she would have known. So look, I think it's so important that we have a healthy, balanced discussion and different opinions, like we've been doing today, and like we've been seeing in the chats. What concerns me is when somebody like Turtle Boy is representing things as truth when they haven't been vetted and they haven't been proven to be true. That's not good journalism, right? That's just sensationalism. And that's what concerns me about some of his quote unquote reporting, is that it was not actually factually correct. But again, a healthy dialogue, a discussion, taking different viewpoints and looking at cases from different angles. I think that's very much part of our system, and it's a great aspect of our system. But I think we all need to be cautious about what we put out there and make sure that what we're putting out to the public, when we have that kind of platform, that it's accurate. That's our obligation. At least that's how I see mine when, I do these kinds of spots, is I want to be accurate, and tell you what I know. And if I don't know, I'm going to say I don't know, or I haven't heard that. But Turtle Boy definitely crossed the line and certainly wasn't unbiased, right?
It's important to say he served jail time, and he might go.
Exactly.
I mean, he's facing, right. I don't know. Do you know the status? He's facing other charges still, right?
He is facing other charges still. Yeah, there's still some open charges. So,
yeah, which include witness intimidation. So
exactly.
I mean, I don't want to see anyone.
Yeah. The allegations are that it continued even after his first arrest, that he continued to allegedly interfere with witnesses, and that's problematic. If that's actually what happened, that's really problematic and concerning.
And I don't wish jail on anyone. People know I hate jail, but I wish everyone the best here. I'm new here. What does COE mean? She is the wife, the chief of everything. Everyone's got a COE in their life, but she's the COE that, wow, this is really sad news here. We started the show with this. 3 cops in Charlotte have passed away, 3 law enforcement officers today, and I can guarantee you they're leaving a lot of kids behind. So I don't know why this country is so violent. It just gave me the chills, because I'm planning to go home and take my little boy for a walk. Those guys will never get that opportunity, or those women, we don't know. But I can guarantee you of those 3 that they've left kids behind. So let's keep them in our thoughts tonight. Jeff Wood, who's taken a lot of heat tonight. He's a retired FBI special agent out of Boston. He focused on gangs and gang violence. Obviously a seasoned investigator. His parents met in Vietnam. His whole family has served this nation. So no matter what you want to say about Jeff Wood, you better keep in mind that his family, they're patriots, and they have fought for this great country, for your freedoms. Jeff Wood, your final thoughts today.
I think we have a long 8 weeks to go, and we'll see if the prosecution can do their job and prove beyond a reasonable doubt, or we'll see the defense coming up and throwing that reasonable doubt into the jury's minds. At the end of the day, we have not seen the investigative work that has been done. If it's sloppy, it'll show, and they won't win this case. If it's not sloppy, then odds are the prosecution will probably win their case. But we have a long 8 weeks. We have a long way to see all this evidence come in. I mean, there's a reason why this is going to be an 8-week trial. The longest trial I had was either 4 or 5 weeks. So it's long, it's tiring, and we'll just see what happens at the end.
We sure will if we make it to the end. Jeff, I'm going to need your help to get there, but good thing the book tour is coming up. I'm going to cut out in the middle and let the COE run the show while I'm I'm on the road. She can take the all the heavy lifting and all the hate. But person who only brings love, Lisa M. Daddio, and I love the last name, a retired police lieutenant with the New Haven Police Department in Connecticut. If you want to learn about policing, you can now enroll at the University of New Haven, where she is teaching, and she will teach you all about law enforcement. Lisa, your final thoughts today.
Yeah, we got to wait and see, right? If the information is sloppy and the investigation is sloppy, we're going to have all that information. I shouldn't say if. We know there's problems, right? So I just think that one of the things that I always say is let's have all the facts before we make a determination. And I think every day we're all going to be sitting there like, oh. And one thing that is interesting to me, 8 weeks for this case, which to me seems like a pretty simple investigation. That's probably all you need to know about the complexities of this case, is the fact that it's going to take 8 weeks to get through it. That's a long time for one case of an individual that was found in snow at the end of the driveway. And really nothing more complex than that. 8 weeks is a long time.
Yeah. By the way, that brings us back full circle because obviously OJ has been in the news with his passing, and a lot of people forgot that trial went on for 9 months. 9 months, which is unbelievable. Again, I don't think I've seen anything as polarizing. Look at this. Joel is the IOE, I like that name, actually, the notorious IOE. But the COE's got COE hats and shirts coming in the merch store. So all the women that run the homes and tell the men what to do, you can all get your COE hats, and we will all listen to you. K9 Catherine here says, mahalo, Joel, and best guest coming to us from Maui. Jennifer Roman is a partner at Tracy Roman and Ramos, where she concentrates her practice in all matters of domestic relations. She is also an analyst for WBZ TV in Boston, where I had an internship. I think it was 1989, and that was a while ago. But Jennifer, now everyone's saying he didn't get a car, and you're saying that you know. Where are you hearing this? They would like to know, and then your final thoughts.
Yeah, so I've heard that information from other news agencies who fact check themselves. And my final thoughts are keep an open mind. And I echo what Lisa and Jeff said in closing as well. A lot can happen in 8 weeks, especially with a trial with this many witnesses and this much evidence. So keep an open mind and let's sort of see what happens, right? It's really kind of interesting. And at the end of it, I just hope that the family finds peace because, as you said, Joel, John O'Keefe's not coming back. Both of these families are forever changed, whether she's found guilty or found not guilty. And I just hope that everyone can find some peace and that, the truth comes out, whatever that may be.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of these police officers, and someone said 8 were shot, 3 killed. This is just one day in America. Let's be nice to each other. No matter what side of the Karen Reed story or the John O'Keefe story you are on, at least be kind in your enthusiasm of whatever side of the case you're on, and we'll let the trial play out, and we will ultimately get the answer. And I'll let you know in 8 weeks if we've got 1 subscriber or a lot more, or who knows. But like I said, I'm heading out on a book tour. I'll be here, and the one in Miami's next week. Then I'm gone a couple weeks after that. But we'll be here. We're going to be here tomorrow. Interestingly, on Tuesday, why is this, Jennifer? On Tuesdays and Thursdays, there's only half days of court. What's going on with that?
Yeah, because the judge has a full docket. So she has other cases that need attention and need to be heard. And just because she's on trial, she can't shift her entire caseload over to other judges because they have their own full caseloads. So it's not atypical to do half days so that she can fit in other hearings, other types of matters that are not trials during this 8-week period.
You heard it there. So tomorrow and Thursday, every Tuesday, Thursday will be a half day. We start at 9 tomorrow, end at 1. I will be here for it, doing another show tomorrow night. I think we're doing Karen Reed shows all week, and we'll be doing an extra Charlie Adelson show and possibly a Gen X granny. People love drama. Joel, I guess I do too. COE loves drama. And possibly a Suzanne Morphew case. There's some news on that case as well. The mom who went missing out of Colorado. But we will see you tomorrow morning, bright and early at 9 a.m. Until then, love you, America. Love you, Alabama and Boston and New Haven, Connecticut, and a double one to Boston. And let's keep the O'Keefes in our thoughts and those police officers who died in the line of duty today. Guys, stick around for 1 second.